Okay.
Take two. James Merritt, Fort Mill School District driver trainer, going through the CDL training for a C2 bus, CDL pre-trip, and doing this recording to help some folks, I hope, make it a little easier for you to get your CDL pre-trip under your belt. Going to remind you that, as always, you're instructed to point to or touch the item that you're inspecting and the item that what you're inspecting for that item. So it's important that you point to and touch. And I will tell you this at the beginning: colors are important on certain things. I use a lot of acronyms, and you can choose to use them or not. I will share them with you. A couple of things that I do is another acronyms that I use is CDL. Everything needs to be, or PMS and CDL, everything needs to be properly mounted and secured, and not cracked, dented, loose, not cracked, dented, or leaking. So you think of those two acronyms from the very beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Point to or touch the item that you're inspecting and what you're inspecting for. Colors are important. All right. We're going to start here in the cab of the bus, right here, looking up here in our where our emergency equipment is, emergency equipment inside. I want to tell you that we have 3 red reflective triangles. Color is important. 3 red reflective triangles. We have a body fluid cleanup kit. We have also a first aid kit. We have a properly mounted, properly secured fire extinguisher, is properly rated and properly charged. If this bus was equipped with fuses, they would be here behind this panel. They're not. This bus is actually equipped with circuit breakers, and they're under this panel right here. Okay. I'm going to turn my ignition switch over to accessory, or to ACC, and you'll see why we need that in just a few moments. But before I do that, I'm going to check my safety belt. I'm going to make sure that my safety belt is securely mounted, and that it's not ripped or frayed or torn. I'm going to make sure it's not. I'm going to also latch my safety belt, and I'm going to make sure it latches properly. It does. Want to look, I'm getting ready to go to the back of the bus, so I'm going to make sure that my floor mats, from the front of the bus to the very back of the bus, my floor mats are clear, and they're not excessively worn. And then I'm going to go to the back of the bus. I'm going to check my seating. I'm going to make sure that in my seating the seat frames are firmly attached to the floor, that they're securely mounted to the floor, they're not broken, and the seat cushions are securely attached to the seat frames as well. We're gonna do that now. Got a stinking truck behind us. I'm going to check each of these. Checking them all the way to the back. The horn. Push this button here. I'm going to open our emergency exit door. Make sure that the alarm sounds. I'm going to open it up, close it. The C2 bus has 2 emergency roof hatches in the top of the bus here. 2 emergency exit windows on the side of the bus. Emergency exit, you would turn your handle to the right, push up. Your emergency exit window, you lift your handle and push out. When I get to the front up here, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to make sure all my emergency exits are properly labeled, and they are. Okay. I am going to sit down, put on my seat belt. I am going to do an safe start. Put on my seat belt here. Safe start is I'm going to take my gear selector all the way to the top, come down one. The bus will not start unless it's in neutral. So I'm going to turn my bus to run. I'm going to wait for all my gauges and everything to cycle through. I was getting ready to move. Okay. So let me move this seat back just a little bit. Like I said, the bus will not start unless it is in neutral. We made sure we did that. I'm going to move the seat back a little bit, give me a little room. And I'm going to do y'all one up. I'm going to give you a little air.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. After I do my safe start, I get my bus to running. That's the first thing I want to do because it begins to help my gauges to begin to climb and my air pressure to build up. If it were down and low, we'll talk about that a little bit. The first thing that I want to do right now is I want to check my mirrors. I want to look at all my mirrors. I'm going to look at my side mirrors. I'm going to look at my crossover mirrors. I'm going to look at my student mirror here. And I am going to make sure that my mirrors are clean, that they're properly adjusted for me, and they are. And I'm going to make sure that there are no loose fittings in the brackets. I don't see that have any loose fittings in the brackets, side mirrors, crossover mirrors, checking them. I'm going to look at my windshield. My windshield is clean, not cracked. No illegal stickers, no obstructions, nothing on the dash, nothing to block my view. I'm going to check my windshield wipers. I'm turning them on. My windshield wipers, arms and blades are securely mounted, not damaged, and the wipers operate smoothly, and the fluid works. And that's the main thing. We'll make sure that they work. Got to be able to see. As I said earlier, I use an acronym, or I like to use several acronyms. The first acronym that I'm going to use right here today is the acronym BOAT, and that pertains to our gauges. And the gauges, you think about it, I'm going to check my battery here, make sure my battery is charging. I'm going to check that battery, make sure it's charging. It is. I'm going to check my oil gauge, make sure it's off of 0 and it's showing increase in pressure. I'm going to check my air gauges here. I have a primary and a secondary air gauge, and I need to make sure that they're between 120 and 140 psi. I will know that they are at that because of a governor shutoff that we'll be listening for here in just a short while. I'm going to look at my water. I'm going to make sure that my temperature gauge is beginning to climb to an operating or to a normal operating range, and that I have water in my system. One thing earlier, I had a truck coming around, so I'm going to back up just a little bit, and sorry to do you this way, but I want to tell you that when we do the safe start and you turn the bus to run, there is an ABS light here that needs to come on and go off. You need to mention that. You need to watch for your ABS light to come on and go off. I missed that earlier because the work truck was coming around and I thought I was going to need to move. So that's both battery, oil, air, temperature, or water. You can do that however you want to do that. Now also I want to make sure that my parking brake is working, so I'm going to do my parking brake check. And as I said earlier, you got to have 120, 140 psi, at least 120 air pressure before checking. I'm going to put the bus in here. I am going to leave my parking brake engaged, and I am going to slightly depress my accelerator and make sure that my parking brake holds, and it does. Now I'm going to do my service brake check. I'm going to pull forward at approximately 5 miles an hour, and I'm going to apply my service brake, make sure my service brake stops the bus and it does not pull to the left or to the right. Service brake stops the bus, does not pull to the left or right. I'm going to secure my bus again. All right, now I want to check my horn. My horn works. You can blow your horn, make sure it works. I want to also check my defroster up here. I'm going to turn on my defroster, and I'm going to turn on my fan for my defroster. I'm going to reach across my dash, and I'm going to feel, and yep, my defroster works. I'm going to turn this back to my heater. I'm going to make sure that my heater works, and if my heater works, then I am going to, after I check that, I'm going to come over here and I am going to turn on, I'm going to turn off my air conditioning, so we make sure, I'm going to turn on my passenger heat on high, and I hear my passenger heater working, so I know that the passenger heat is working. At this time, I want to check my light indicators. My light indicators is everything inside the cab. It's for my benefit as the driver that tells me that these lights are working. So what I am going to do at this time is I am going to turn on my headlights. I'm going to leave them on. I am going to activate my high beam. I'm going to look in here on my dash, and my high beam indicator is working. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn on my left turn signal. My left turn signal indicator is working. I'm going to turn on my right turn signal. My right turn signal indicator is working. I am going to activate my four ways, or my hazard lights, and my four ways, my hazard lights indicator here is working. Now I am going to turn on my amber warning lights right here. I'm going to turn them on, doors closed. I'm going to turn them on, and when I do, my amber warning light indicator comes on. That lets me know that my amber indicator is working, and my amber light should be working fine. I'm going to open my door, and when I open my door, my red indicator comes on. My red warning light indicator comes on, and I'm going to look across my shoulder in the mirror here, or back. I'm going to look, both my stop signs deployed, and both lights are flashing red. It's fully extended, and both lights are flashing red. I'm going to look out to the front. I can see my crossing gate is fully extended, and it's working properly. I'm going to look back here in my step well, and I can see that my step well light is working. Now I am going to close my door. The door opens and closes properly from the inside of the bus. Now at this time, I'm going to ask someone to go off the bus and check my exterior lights. I want to make sure that my exterior lights are working. So I'm going to open my window so I can communicate with my instructor, or whoever's inspecting my lights. I'm going to ask them to step out front. They have. I'm going to shut my door. I'm going to ask him to check my 3 clearance lights, 3 amber clearance lights. I'm going to ask him to check my 2 amber student warning lights. I am going to ask him to check my 2 red student stop lights, my stop sign, and my crossing gate. going to close my door. I am going to turn on my left turn signal. I'm going to turn on my right turn signal. I'm going to turn on my amber lights. I am now going to do my high beams. Check my high beams and get thumbs up on that. All right, Mr. Instructor, will you please check my clearance lights down the side of the bus? When you get to the rear of the bus, please check my strobe light, my clear strobe light on the top of the bus, and my 3 red clearance lights at the back, and I'll turn everything else on. Strobe light, 3 red clearance lights, 2 amber student warning lights, 2 red stop lights, 4 red brake lights,
Hold on.
2 clear reverse lights, 2 or left turn signal, right turn signal, hazards. All right, come on up. And just so everybody knows, we're about to perform an air brake check. This air brake check that we're about to perform is crucial to your CDL training. It's crucial to your passing your test. It has to be done in an orderly fashion. It has to be done exact almost, because you can't veer from it. It's your air brake check or your lab test. Your leakage, your air warning, and your brake check. Air pressure must be built to 120 to 140 psi. And I know that we have 120 to 140 psi, and you may have heard it on the video, but that the governor cutoff just kicked in. That means that it shut off the compressor, knowing that I've got 120 to 140 psi. I'm going to turn my steering wheel to the left so that when we get off the bus, it helps me to know better, or to see better when I'm inspecting the tires and the brakes. So I'm going to turn my steering column, I'm going to turn my steering wheel to the left. I'm going to let go of it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my foot on my service brake. I'm going to do it for 1 minute. I'm going to time myself for 1 minute. And within that minute, I should not lose more than 3 psi of leakage. Got to make sure I see my my air gauges. Can't have more than 3 psi of leakage. When that minute is complete, I'm going to fan my brakes, decreasing my air pressure to approximately 55 psi, or manufacturer specification. And at 55 psi, my low air warning light and buzzer should come on. I'm going to continue fanning my brakes to approximately 40 psi, and at that time my parking brake should pop out and engage. I'm going to go ahead and turn these air conditioning off, because we got to turn the bus off. Important, I think this is a key thing, that once you put your hand on your ignition switch to turn your bus off, don't take your hand away from your ignition switch until you have turned it back to run. You gotta turn this to run, because if you release your parking brake before you turn it to run, you're gonna dump your air. We don't want to do that. We got to have 120 to 140 psi, and especially when we apply our brakes. All right, so I'm going to turn my bus off. I am going to cut off my headlights so we don't have all that sound. I am going to turn my bus back to run. I turned my bus back to run. At this point, I am going to depress my service brake rather firmly. Does somebody have a timepiece they can time me for a minute? I'm going to depress my service brake rather firmly. I am going to release my parking brake. My parking brake is settled. My gauges are settling in around 110 or so. They're holding right there. So I'm watching them. And have you started the minute? Okay, so we got someone counting down for us on our minute. I have my foot on the brake. Again, we're looking to make sure we do not have more than 3 psi of leakage. Watching. I'm seeing no leaks. It's holding well right where it leveled out and stayed. Waiting for this 1 minute to pass by can be sort of monotonous.
Yeah, halfway.
Okay. Continuing to watch my gauges. Still no leakage. They're holding right where they leveled off. Waiting for this 1 minute. When the minute's up, we'll begin fanning the brakes again to approximately 55 psi and decreasing pressure down to about 40 psi.
Minute's up.
Okay, and this is our air brake check, our leakage. We've done the leakage. I'm fanning my brakes, and I'm getting down here. I'm watching, getting close to about 55 psi, right around there. Air brake warning light come on, and my buzzer. Now I'm watching for my parking brake to engage. Yep, parking brake engaged right at about approximately 40 psi. So now I'm going to turn my bus off. I'm going to take my key with me, and I am going to go to the back of the bus, and I'm going to go back there and check and push my student check button, for lack of a better way to say it. All right, I'm here at the back of the bus. This is where the silver button is. We got to push this. You're going to see the lights flash, and that way we won't have our bus honking at us and blowing at us and fussing at us when we open the door. Okay, as we exit the bus, one of the things we are going to get to first, of course, is the handrail. You're going to get off this bus. We're going to check this handrail. Just grab a hold of your handrail and pull on it, securely attached. That's all we got to say. Going to look at our passenger entry. Make sure our steps are clear. They're not excessively worn. The step light is secure, is clean, not broken. And I'm going to release my air pressure here on my emergency here. Emergency door release. Push this left lead. I'm going to push my door open. As I push my door open, my entry, I see that a little open and close from the outside. My hinges are secure. I can see that all my hinges are secure, properly mounted. They're not cracked. They're not loose. No missing nuts and bolts. The seals, I'm going to check my seals. All my seals are intact. I'm going to look at my glass as I get off the bus. My glass is clean, cracked, and not missing. So if y'all will come on off the bus, and as we continue in our training, we've got to check our mirrors. I know we talked about them from the inside, but we're going to check our side mirrors and brackets. We're going to make sure our mirrors are secure. We're going to make sure they're clean, not cracked, missing, and that all our brackets are secure and not broken, not missing any nuts or bolts. So I'm gonna grab a hold of that, give it a firm shake, secure it to the bus. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my latch for my hood, because I'm gonna need my hood open here in just a little bit. I'm gonna grab a hold of all my mirrors all the way around. I'm looking at them. All the way around. I get to this side of the bus, go ahead and open up my latch over here. And like I said, some of this gets a little redundant, but it's part of the test. Part of what you gotta do. I'm gonna look under my bus. I'm gonna make sure I have nothing leaking under there. We'll do that again in a minute. But I can see from back here, I don't see anything leaking. I'm gonna get my hand up. Remember the thought, point to or touch. Also remember, colors are important. I'm gonna get my hands up. I got 3 amber clearance lights. I got 2 amber student warning lights. I got 2 red student stop lights. I got 2 amber turn signals and hazard lights. I got 2 clear headlights with high beams. All my lights, I can look at them. All lights are securely attached. They're clean, they're functional, and they are not missing. All my lenses are intact and not missing. I'm going to check my crossing gate. Crossing gate securely attached to the bus. It's not loose hanging. The cable is not excessively worn. I'm going to open up the hood of my bus, and I know that I just released everything. Sometimes they can be a little hard to get open. So I'm going to come here to this side of my bus. When I get here to this side of my bus, so here's a little cheat for you, cooling system. This is our coolant. Going to look at our coolant. One of the things I say about our coolant, and another acronym, ARM. This fluid has to be above the refill mark. It is. Coolant above the refill mark. It's red or green in color. All right. I'm going to look inside here. Here's my other acronyms. My properly mounted and secured, not cracked, dented, loose. I've got a alternator. My alternator right there is properly mounted and secured. No missing nuts or bolts. I see them. It's not cracked, dented, or loose. I'm going to look here in the back. Right here is my water pump. Right behind the fan. My water pump is there. My water pump's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, dented, or leaking. I don't see any water leaking. I have a serpentine belt, or the serpentine belt. I'm going to make sure that my serpentine belt is not cracked, frayed. I'm going to make sure it's not excessively worn. It's not torn. And that there's no more than a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch play in the serpentine belt. It actually connects the water pump and the alternator and all that. I'm gonna look on this side at my hoses just to make sure there's no leaks of any of my hoses on this side of the bus. So now I'm gonna keep walking around. I'm looking underneath again. I see no leaks while we've been sitting here. Just gonna double check on those leaks. I'm gonna come here on this side, and I have another acronym that I like to use. And that's called POACH. P-O-A-C-H, just like you're poaching an egg. Power steering. This is my power steering. Another cheat, it says it right there. Power steering fluid is ARM, above the refill mark. My power steering, I'm going to check my O, is my oil. This is my oil dipstick, which I would pull out, wipe off, reinsert the dipstick, pull it back out, look at it, make sure it's above the refill mark. My AC is my air compressor. My air compressor is here attached to the side of the engine where all these hoses come out of it. My air compressor is gear driven. My air compressor is also properly mounted and secured. I don't see that it's missing any nuts or bolts. It's not cracked, dented, and I hear no leaks from my air compressor. Again, I'm gonna look at all my hoses, power steering hoses, water hoses, under the bus, under the transmission. I see no leaks. All right, if you want to kind of video that just a moment. All right, we're going to move to what I call another acronym, Triple S. Triple S is our steering box. This is our steering box right here. Steering box is properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts or bolts. It's not leaking, so it's not cracked in it or leaking. That's our steering box. I'm going to look at my steering linkage and arm. Looks just like an arm. When I look at my steering linkage and arm, I'm going to make sure that my steering linkages arm, the connecting arms, they're not worn or cracked. I'm going to make sure the joints and the sockets here at the end of the steering rod and the bottom of the steering linkage there, my joints and sockets are not excessively worn. They're not missing, no nuts and bolts, not loose. And my cotter pins here are in place. Cotter pins are in place. That's my SSS, steering box, steering linkage. Now my shock. My shock, front shock, is securely mounted to the bus. I don't hear that it's leaking. Now I'm going to I'm going to talk about another acronym. It's called BUS. B-B-U-S-S. So this is my brake chamber. That's my first B. My brake chamber is properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts or bolts. My brake clamp is in place. My brake hoses, my couplings, are securely mounted. My hoses are not worn. I hear no leaks. They're properly mounted and secured. I'm going to look down here at my U-bolts. That's the U in my bus. My U-bolts are properly mounted and secured with no missing nuts or bolts. Now I'm going to look at my first S. My first S is my spring mount. My spring mount and hanger is right here, and I have one back behind the wheel as well. I'm looking at my spring mount and hanger. My spring mount and hanger has no missing nuts or bolts. My bushings, brackets, and bolts are securely mounted, not missing any bolts. They're not loose, they're not excessively worn. Then I'm going to look at my springs. My springs are securely attached. My springs are not broken, they're not missing, and they're not shifted. So I'm checking my springs to make sure they're not broken, shifted, or missing. All right, then I'm going to check my slack adjuster and pull rod. This is my slack adjuster and pull rod. I'm going to make sure my slack adjuster and pull rod is properly mounted and secured. It's not missing any nuts or bolts. Now my slack adjuster and pull rod would not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand if the brakes were released. Okay, now I'm going to look at my brake drum, and my brake drum is right here. My brake drum is not cracked, it's not broken, it's not missing any nuts or bolts. My brake lining is right here. I'm going to look at my brake lining. So I'm looking at my brake drum and my brake lining. There's no grease or oil or contaminants on my brake drum, my brake lining. And none of that's broken. And it's not worn dangerously thin. Okay. All right, the next thing that we're going to look at is our tire. We're going to make sure, we're going to talk about our tire. First thing I want to do is I want to look at my tire. I want to look at my tread. I want to look at my sidewalls of my tire. I want to make sure everything's evenly worn. There's no rips, tears, bulges, cuts, or anything on my tire, anywhere on my tread or on my sidewalls. Checking that real good. Now on the front, I got to make sure that I've got a tread depth that's no less than 4/32. The front of the bus, a tread depth of no less than 4/32 on this front tire. Another thing, if I had a tire gauge, I would come here, I'd get my valve stem. Looking at my valve stem right here. It's capped. My valve stem's not broken. It's not bent. It's capped. It's not leaking. But I would check, make sure I have proper inflation in my tire. I'm going to look at my rim. I'm going to make sure my rim is not bent, not cracked, not broke, and there's no welding repairs on my rim. I'm going to look at every lug nut. I'm going to check my lug nuts, make sure they're all in place. Can't have any missing lug bolts, lug nuts. I'm going to make sure they're there. I'm going to also look and make sure that there is no rust trails that would indicate looseness from my lug nuts. I'm going to also look around my lug bolt holes, make sure that there's no distortions in the holes, fresh metal and the like that would indicate looseness. I'm going to look here at my hub seal. My hub seal is not leaking, which I would believe would indicate that it's full of hub oil. So that's my hub seal. It's not leaking. Level should be full. I'm going to inspect now the side of my bus. I'm going to get a hold of my stop sign here. Pull on it a little bit. My stop sign is securely mounted. My cable's not frayed. I'm going to step back. I'm going to look down the side of my bus, and I'm going to look and make sure I got 3 clearance lights down the side of the bus. I've got 2 turn signals here on the side of the bus. I got on this particular bus, sometimes there's 3, this particular bus, 2 reflectors. They're going to be red in the back, amber in the front. Red in the back,
Amber in the front.
All right, so I'm also going to check and make sure that my reflective tape is intact and undamaged here alongside of the bus, around my emergency exit window there.
Oh, I can see
And
that.
I'm going to make sure that my emergency exit window outside of the bus is
Mark.
properly labeled, and it is. We're going to go under the bus now, and when we go under the bus, I'm going to go over to the other side, and we'll continue the pre-trip under the bus.
Okay, pause.
Y'all can go on in. One of you can come with me. 2 of you go on that side.
Wherever you can see better.
In front of the tire.
In front of the tire? Okay.
Under the bus.
All right. You ready?
No.
I'm gonna take this off. The last time I checked myself, my name.
All righty. How's everybody?
Good.
Sorry I did y'all this way with no mats, but it's okay. You think you can see me good enough?
I'm gonna scoot up.
All right. Under the bus here, I use an acronym called DEFF. DEFF. Meaning I'm going to start with my drive shaft. This is my drive shaft. I'm going to look at it from the front, or from front of the differential all the way to the front. I'm going to make sure it's not bent.
Sorry.
I'm going to look at my couplings. I'm going to make sure my couplings are securely mounted, that they're not loose. I'm going to make sure that there's no foreign objects in my drive shaft all the way to the front of the bus, or to the transmission. I'm going to look at my exhaust. DEFF, I'm looking at my exhaust. I'm going to look at my exhaust from the back all the way to the front. As I'm looking at my drive shaft too, my exhaust, I see no carbon soot. I see no rust that would indicate looseness. I'm going to look here at my frame. This is my frame. Over there's the other frame.
Yep.
I'm going to make sure my frame is properly mounted and secured. I don't see any missing nuts and bolts. I don't see any broken welds. I'm going to look at my cross members. I'm going to make sure all my cross members are securely mounted. And I don't guess it hurts from right up here to look at my lines, my brake lines and my brake hoses, my air hoses, while I'm looking at them here. So I've done that. DEFF. Then I'm going to come to another bus. BUSS. And we're going to get to that BUSS now again. And it's just the same, basically, as the front. It's our brake chamber, brake hoses and the like, so I'm going to talk about that. Brake chamber right here, properly mounted and secured. I don't see any missing nuts or bolts. My brake clamp, properly mounted and secured, no missing nuts and bolts. My brake hoses, couplings and fittings, I can see it on both sides. This one over here, I can look at that one over there. My couplings and fittings and my hoses are securely mounted. I don't see any wear, I don't see any holes, I don't see any tear, and the couplings are all securely mounted. And I hear no leaks from my airbag or air, my brake chamber. And you say, well, shouldn't, because all the air is out of the bus. And that's a good thought, but that's okay. All right. So now I've done my brake chamber, my brake hoses. I'm going to talk about my U-bolts. U-bolts are right here and over there. I can see them. U-bolts are properly mounted and secured. I don't see any missing nuts or bolts there with my U-bolts. And here on this bus, I'm going to look at my spring mountain hanger. Spring mountain hanger right there. She's got the pointing at it. Right over here, I got a spring mountain hanger right here, properly mounted and secured. I don't see any missing nuts or bolts over here. Bushings, brackets, and bolts are right in here. I don't see any missing nuts or bolts in my bushings, brackets, and bolts. And they seem that they're not excessively worn, that they're secure. I'm going to look at my springs. My springs, as we said in the front, they're properly mounted, secure. They're not cracked, they're not dented, they're not broken, and they're not missing, and they're not shifted. That's checking all my springs here under the bus. I am going to look at my slack adjuster and my push rod. Slack adjuster and push rod right behind the brake chamber there. I can see it. Not missing any nuts or bolts. The one back here behind this one. Slack adjuster and push rod, not missing any nuts or bolts. Slack adjuster and push rod would not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand if the brakes were released. So, and I mentioned the brake clamp. I hope brake clamp, you got to mention your brake clamp that is attached and it's not missing any nuts or bolts. I'm going to look inside my tire. I'm going to get a little closer here.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to look inside my tire at my brake drum. My brake drum is not cracked, dented. not broken, not missing any nuts or bolts. I'm going to look at my brake lining right inside my brake drum there. My brake lining is, there's no grease, no debris, no oil. My brake drum and my brake lining, I can see top and bottom, they're not worn dangerously thin. So I'm checking that. Now, on this bus in the back, we have bud wheels. There's actually 2 wheels. And they have to be evenly spaced. So we look in here, they are evenly spaced. There's nothing in between the bud wheels. So we're gonna make sure there's nothing in between the bud wheels. And now we're finished with the front of the tire and under the bus at the front.
How are you? All right.
I'm gonna meet you around on the other side.
Okay.
I'm gonna meet you around on the other side, and we'll talk about the tire over there. Okay.
Okay. My knees. My knees are killing me.
Everybody okay?
Yep.
All right. How are you? Very good.
Hi.
We're just about to take 1, 2.
I'm gonna go take my cigarette break.
There you go. You have to walk a long way to do that, don't you?
I come through the field. I got a little car to drive, but I'd rather walk instead of keep pulling it out and just putting it back in.
There you go.
Good exercise. Here you go.
Okay.
All right, so here we are. Going to inspect the rear wheel. Same thing as in the front. We're going to make sure that the treads are evenly worn. We're going to look at our sidewall. No rips, cuts, tears, bulges. On the rear tire, you cannot have less than 4 30-seconds. There you go, 2 30-seconds. 4 30-seconds in the front, 2 30-seconds in the rear. The way to remember that, I think, is front tire, spelled F-R-O-N-T, 4, front. You got 2 tires back here, 2 30-seconds. Helps you remember that. All right, if I had a tire gauge, I would come here to my valve stem. Valve stem is capped, it's not bent, it's not cracked. I'd make sure I got proper inflation. I'm going to check my rim, make sure my rim is not bent, it's not cracked, not broken, no welding repairs. Same thing as in the front. I'm going to look at all my lug nuts, make sure that all my lug nuts are intact. None are missing. They look like as though they're tight. I don't see any rust trails that would indicate any looseness. I don't see any distortions in the lug bolt holes that would also indicate looseness. Here on the back, I'm going to check my axle seal. I'm just going to look at it. It's not leaking, meaning it should be full of axle grease. Splash guard right here, securely attached, no cuts, cracks, or damage to my splash
There we
guard.
go again.
We're going to go back under the bus.
We're going back under.
Yeah, go right back under the bus here.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Ooh, don't go back there.
Oh.
Please. All right. I don't want to lay on that thing. All right. Coming under the bus here. Get under bus as
All right.
far as we can here. Under the back of the bus here, I use another acronym. Like I said, if you don't like the acronyms, you don't have to use them. Acronyms are, I think they help me. Maybe they'll help some of you. I'm not 100% sure, but if they do, so be it. Under here I use the acronym FATS, and I spell that F-F-A-A-T-S. FATS. 2 F's, 2 A's, T and S. First is my fuel tank. First F, fuel tank. I'm going to look at my fuel tank. The frame securely mounted, no missing nuts or bolts. My fuel tank is not crack dented. No, it's not leaking. It's properly mounted and secured. My fuel lines, I can see over there. My fuel lines are not leaking. And we're under the bus. I see no leaks under the back of the bus. So my F, fuel tank, fuel lines. Then my airbags. My first A, my airbags. I'm going to look at both my airbags. My airbags are securely mounted. They're not cracked. They're not damaged. I hear no leaks from my airbags. My air mounting hanger, which is right here, connecting my springs. My air mounting hanger, securely mounted. My bushing brackets and bolts is here. Not missing any bolts or nut. And it's they're not my bushings, brackets, and bolts are not excessively worn. All right. When I get back under here, or look up above the differential, there is a bar that runs from the top of the differential over to the frame. It's a torsion bar or a torque bar. Torque bar, securely mounted, not broken, not damaged, and not cracked. Torque bar. Then I'm going to look at my rear shock. My rear shock is right here. You can see it between the wheel and the airbag. You can look at it. My shock is securely mounted. It's not leaking. I hear no leaks from my shock. That's everything under the back of the bus. So we're going to go out. That's all we need to do, climbing under the bus. Everybody all right?
Last time I almost choked myself my whole day. The hard way.
Yeah. All righty, boys and girls. How's everybody feeling about what you're seeing?
Good.
Think you can do it next week?
Study.
You're gonna practice.
Study.
And study.
Another thing, like I said, we always want to get back, get an overall view of what you're looking at, what you're inspecting. Remember the point to or touch. We can't really point to it or touch it from right here. But I see on top of the bus I got a clear strobe light. I see I got 3 red clearance lights. I got 2 amber student warning lights. I got 2 red student stop lights. I got 2 amber turn signals and hazard lights. I got 4 red brake lights and tail lights. I got 2 clear reverse lights. I got 2 red reflectors. On the back of the bus here, all my lights, I want to tell you, are clean, clear, functional, and not missing. I got 2 tag lights, clear tag lights right here and here. I'm going to open my back door. I'm going to make sure my back door opens and closes properly from the outside. My emergency exit door, that is. I will check my hinges. Hinges are properly mounted, secured, not missing any nuts or bolts. I'm going to look at my seal all the way around. My seal is intact and undamaged. I'm going to close this. It closes. I'm going to look. My emergency exit door is properly labeled. My reflective tape on the back of my bus is intact and undamaged. I'm going to come around here to the side of my bus now. I'm going to open up my fuel cap, make sure my fuel cap is tight, and it is.
Thank you.
That's
You ready?
Yeah.